when I started this campaign, it's been about 19 months now. I've been campaigning a long time. There are babies who've been born and are now walking and talking since I started this campaign. And because I've been campaigning so long, people have asked me, they said, what is it that you've learned about America since you started campaigning? And I said, number one, America's big. You know, when you campaign in all 48 states, then I was getting there. I just came back from Hawaii, so I was born there. I know that's the same. When you campaign in all 48 states in the continental United States, you get a sense of this unbelievable panorama, this miracle we call America. What an extraordinary blessing it is to be in this country. The second impression you get is that the people are as wonderful as the land. You know, the American people, and look, every politician says this, but I feel like I've got some pretty good credentials to talk about the American people. I've met a lot of them over the last 19 months. Yeah. And I've been in inner cities, and I've been in fancy suburbs, and I've been in, you know, on farms and VFW halls and diners. And one of the things you learn about America is just how decent and generous and hardworking they are, how self-reliant and independent they are, how much they're willing to sacrifice on behalf of their families, how much they're willing to contribute on behalf of their communities. The American people are extraordinary. And then the third thing you learn from traveling across the country over these many months is that those same people, those wonderful, decent people, are having a tough time right now and are anxious about the future. It's not that they're pessimistic. You know, the American people are congenitally optimistic, but they have seen over the last 8 years their life chances, their work, their hopes and their dreams slipping away. Not everybody, but a whole lot of folks. A whole lot of folks understand what the statistics tell us, that during the 1990s, their incomes went up $6,000 for an average family. And since George Bush took office, they've gone down by $1,000 in real terms. They see it in the fact that plants are closing. They see it in the fact that their wages and incomes aren't going up. They see it in the price of gas they pay at the pump. They see it in the food that they have to buy at the grocery stores. They see it when they lose their pensions or their health care. It's hard to save. It's harder to retire. They were using their home equity as a safety net, as a way of securing their future, but they had to draw down on it each and every year because their incomes and wages weren't keeping pace with inflation. And when the housing market went out, suddenly that wasn't available. The credit cards were maxed out. And you start seeing record foreclosures all across the country, and you start seeing record bankruptcies. And everywhere you go, you meet a single mom who doesn't have health care even though she's working 2 jobs. Or you talk to young people who have the grades and the will and the drive to go to college but can't afford it. Or you talk to a guy who had to pack up the equipment in his factory that he had worked on for 20 years and that his father had worked on for 20 or 30 years before him because the plant was being shipped away. And not only has he lost his job, but he's lost his sense of dignity and his sense of self-worth. And he feels like maybe he's a failure. That's what people are experiencing each and every day all across America. And contrary to what John McCain's advisors say, they're not whining about it. They're not in a mental depression about it. They're still getting up every single day and working or looking for work. They're still determined to make something of their lives and patch things together so that they can provide a better life for their children. And they don't expect government to solve all their problems. But what they do expect is that for all the tax dollars that they're paying, that maybe, just maybe, government could help them a little bit. Could give them a little bit of a hand. Could be working for them instead of working against them. Could be hearing their voices instead of the voices of the oil companies, or the insurance lobby, or the drug lobby. They want to be heard. That's what this election's about. That's what we're fighting for. That's why I'm running for president of the United States of America. Now, you want to win. And saying it doesn't make it so. I mean, it would be nice to think that after 8 years of economic disaster, after 8 years of bungled foreign policy, after being engaged in a war that should have never been authorized and should have never been waged, that has cost us $1 trillion and thousands of lives, that people would say, just toss the bums out. Toss the bums out. We're starting from scratch. We're starting over. This is not working. So I understand why a lot of folks feel like, well, this should just happen. You know, I mean, why are we having to run all these television commercials? Why are we going to raise all this money? Just look, read the papers. These are the knuckleheads who've been in charge. But American politics aren't that simple. Yeah. American politics aren't that simple because, you know, the fact of the matter is that at a certain point, when government has not been serving the people for this long, people get cynical. And they tune out. And they start saying to themselves, well, you know what? A plague on both their houses. And they are willing to consume, you know, negative information more quickly than positive information because, for good reason, they've seen how promises haven't been kept and how again and again we haven't delivered. You know, they've heard presidential candidates for 2-3 decades now talk about energy independence. And yet we know that each successive decade we become more and more dependent on foreign oil. They've heard for decades of talk about health care reform, and yet they know that we have 47 million people without health insurance, and if you've got health insurance, you've seen your co-payments and your deductibles and premiums going up. We've seen, decade after decade, political leaders declare that they are going to be the education leaders and make sure that every child has an opportunity, and yet we know that there are millions of children across America that are still languishing in underfunded schools, with